Today is a very special episode with a very special person on a very special day. Justice has been not even served. Justice has been manifested today with the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial. Literally, we were about to start this podcast, and our guest was like, and what's crazy is I talked to our podcast team and was like, hey, let's find a way to incorporate the Derek Chauvin trial verdict into the conversation. Didn't know when they were going to come to the verdict or announce the verdict, and I guess she didn't even say hi. She was just like, hey, are you all hip to what's going on right now? And it was just like, everything that's been happening with Fire in Africa has been just really ancestral, God driven, and just alignment. And I'm just truly grateful that I'm a father, and I'm also raising a Black boy. He's 4, and I'm really reflecting on. I was raised by a Black mother, and I was just really frustrated with how just tight she was on me as a kid, just truly just tight on me, like just wouldn't let me out of her sight. And and then at a young age, I just knew like I was a creative and that I just needed my space to like, just to be me. And it's not that she didn't give it to me, but she gave it to me with constraint. And I was very frustrated as a kid growing up, and, hearing the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial, but also just being a father and a husband of a 4-year-old black son. It's just you kind of wish you could go back and just apologize to your mother, because you don't really understand what that means. It's really hard for me to protect him, but also protect his innocence at the same time. And I truly get it now. Literally just got it this weekend, even before the trial. So I say that to say I'm just really grateful for our guests, our kinfolk, our family member, but also our publicist and the person who's really just who God is allowing to lead this ship for Fireside Africa. So I'm just truly grateful to have the Yvette Noel-Schure on the podcast today. Just truly grateful for your presence and your light, and just really just seeing Greenwood and Fireside Africa in Tulsa for what it is. And I'm just truly honored to have you. So welcome to the Fireside with Dr. View.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. What a day.
What a day.
What a day to be here as a Black woman, as a woman who gave birth to a Black boy who is now a 37-year-old man, as a Black woman who still to this day, my son is a married man with a daughter. I still, before I buy anything on my grocery list, I always make sure there are light bulbs, because I still leave a light on for my son.
I want to
37 years old. I still leave a light on for him.
I want to ask a personal question before we get into this interview. Just as a mother and raising a son, what was it like raising him? Were you scared? Were you confident that you knew that he was going to be okay? And then how has that evolved over time? Because I think just for me personally, but just like Black people as a whole, it's just people are just trying to really figure it out. And I don't want to take away this opportunity just to gain some wisdom and knowledge. So as a mother, relatively around the same age as me, like in regards to your son, like, what was it like seeing him when you had him in your arms and to see him grow? And like, how did you protect him, or did you give him the freedom? Like, or was it a balance? And did you make mistakes? And if you did, like, how did you acknowledge those mistakes?
So many
Then
mistakes, so many
yeah, like
mistakes.
because I think what I'm trying to get to is like, how did you humanize yourself? I think when people think of Fine Little Africa and the people behind it, and they see you, and they see Larry, they see me, they see Steph, and other people, Ethiopia, like they put people on this pedestal, and like I'm truly trying to utilize Fine Little Africa as a way to humanize people's experience. So, like in your experience, like taking the publicist hat off, just as a mother and a Black woman, like what was that evolution like for you, and what is it like to this day, and even more, what is it like today as you hear the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial?
Well, Dr. View, that's the greatest thing anyone has ever asked me. My biggest role is that of mother. Um, my son is 37 and I'm in my 50s. So that means I had that child in college. I was in college. I was a 21-year-old that just got married, and I was a 22-year-old. So figure it out. I'm 59 years old. And, usually, at least when you think of somebody like in their 30s or their 40s, you think that their parents had them in their 30s, right? So, but I had him at 22, and I took him everywhere. I was really, really confident that we had a big Caribbean immigrant family that came to Brooklyn that was going to protect him, that with love, right? But I was never nervous when he was indoors. But the thought of my child going outdoors, because I knew from a very young age that Black people are precious gems. And we need to be protected. We need to be hidden in silk and put away in that fancy drawer, because it's scary to come out because somebody wants to take you. You too shiny. Your light is too bright. They want to step on you. And I knew that very, very young. So when my firstborn was a son, I always tease everybody that, you start sleeping with a machete under your pillow, because it's like, I've got to protect this king. I got to protect this king because he's going to carry on the name. He's going to carry on the name. But more importantly, whoever comes after him, he's also going to become a teacher to them, whatever other children I had. And as my husband and I got really blessed, we had 2 daughters. So Michael's role was really increased. Like he had to be a really, really big brother. I made so many mistakes. And believe it or not, some of the mistakes come from covering him up almost too much. There were times when he had to have been like maybe 13 before I told him he could walk across the street to the store. And he went across the street to the store. We lived in Jersey City, and I followed him. And he was so upset. He was like, Mom, but I was always nervous. I was afraid of cops. I was afraid of bullies. I was just afraid, and then one day I woke up, and I think I must have spoken to my mom, and she said, you have to pray on that. You have to pray on that because you're putting all your fears onto him. But I remember, even though I listened to my mom, I remember when my son got into double digits, going from 9 to 10, I had to have tough conversations with him. And I was like, this is my beautiful baby boy. And I'm going to talk to him about racism, police brutality. I'm going to talk to him about, you're going to be the first person they point their finger at. If you're in a room with everybody, they're going to point the finger at you if something bad happens. How do you protect yourself from that? I even had to talk to him about relationships at that young age and being careful who you get involved with, and it's okay to say no, even as a boy. It's okay to say, no, I'm not ready for that yet. Those were tough conversations. I remember saying to Michael, yesterday you were my baby boy. And today you've become a threat to society. That's how they see you. Who wants to tell their kid that? My son was a genius is a genius. He was so smart. He would talk to me and I would run and get a thesaurus to find out what the heck he was saying. He would just take 3 hours and stay in his room. And then when I entered the room, he would have built a castle, like some edifice out of Legos, not saying a word, not coming out to get some water, not doing anything. I knew he was special and he needed to be protected. And like I said, to this day, I'm protecting him. But did I overprotect him? Yeah, I did. But will I take it back? Hell no. Not when my worst thoughts have become such a reality to so many Black women. Every single name. And trust me, at my age, I've heard Black men dying. I've heard their names way before this generation started talking about Aubrey and Michael Brown. Way before they were killing Black men. Names that people have forgotten now. So every time you try to let up on your kid, okay, let me just hold back a little bit. Now let him, go on. Have a good time. Breaking news. So what do? You say, no, you can't go. Sorry. You will be happy when you're older that I protected you. But for right now, be mad at me. Go in your room and say all kinds of things about me. But I'm never going to apologize for loving you and protecting you. That's the role of a Black mom. And that's the role of every white woman, every white mother who has given birth to a Black child. Because let's not take away their pain. White women who are married and in love, or not married and in love with a Black man or a brown man, give birth to Black children. Don't forget that. Look at that young man. Mm-hmm. Dante Wright. You think his mother is not feeling my pain? They killed her son. To us, they killed her Black son, but they killed her son. No mother should have to go through that. And guess what? No father should have to go through that. Let's not give all the credit to just the ones who give birth. Beautiful, beautiful dads lose their sons and lose their daughters. Breonna Taylor was asleep. She was in her bed. And the most mundane things that we do, we get killed doing it. So don't protect our kids. Listen, if I were to be a mom today, I would bring in the maternity ward, I would already have a harness for my child. And it'll be right here. You're not going anywhere. That's what we have to do until we don't have to. But when will that day come? They have to start seeing us as human. And until they do, we have to keep loving on our children, loving on each other, loving our community. The whole world loved on George Floyd, his family, the whole universe, the energy in that universe. There is no way any one of us could have seen that and pretend we didn't see it. And those 12 jurors could not, even if they never had seen that video, even if they didn't see that video. And that's how they got qualified to be on the jury, because they're like, I didn't want to see that. No. They were forced to see it in that trial. And if you see that, I didn't see it for 2 weeks. I refused to. I didn't want to, because someone said he called his mama. And I said, oh my God. And when I saw it, I said, that's Michael. Every mother heard George Floyd say, mama. And I'm sorry, you protect your kid. You protect your kid. You protect all the people you love. And we have to form these circles of love and protection. And if it means that we create a very small circle, that's what we're going to do. I refuse to go places where I am not appreciated. I used to be like, well, why? I need to be there. No, you don't. No, you don't need to be there. You don't need to get validation from people who don't want you. Love and protect the people who do. Celebrate the people who love you. I'm not bowing down to my enemies. I'm sorry. All the preachers in the world could be mad at me right now, but I am not. I don't want to have dinner with my enemies. I'm sorry. And I'm the kindest person you're probably ever going to meet. But there comes a time when when they start stepping on your neck, you want to sit down with them? No. And listen, there are amazing people in this world, and they come in every shape, color, size, ethnicity. And I grew up in a family of police officers. My dad was a police officer in Grenada, my cousin in Grenada, my youngest brother who died on the job, not because he was working, he was on his way to work and a drunken driver hit him in Grenada, and my nephew here in New York, in Harlem. So I grew up with Caribbean police officers. I grew up wanting to protect my nephew who really wanted to be a cop. Guess what? It's in the blood. My dad, his grandfather. So I'm not like, oh, cops are the worst things in the world. There are bad cops. Bad cops. And
Absolutely.
until those good cops say that they're bad, we're going to have to keep protecting ourselves and our people and the children that we bring in this world.
Okay, so I'm a DJ this thing because I'm gonna tie it all in. And Yvette knows I can do this really well. So I think everything that you said is the part of the mantra, everything is us, that people don't want to talk about. You're talking about everything is us from a very somber place in regards to the fact that you said something. You said George Floyd's mother. You said George Floyd's mother, George Floyd, her son, is your son.
Absolutely.
And that's the
Absolutely.
and that's the prime example of what we're trying to convey with Fireside Africa, is that just everything is us, that everything that is happening right now is connected to everybody. And not even just Black people, but just everyone. Everyone is feeling what's going on right now. Everyone was waiting at their phones, their TVs, their iPads.
The whole world stopped to watch this. I have friends in New Zealand.
Absolutely.
That stopped, in London, on the continent of Africa, in the Caribbean. George Floyd died so things could change. I want things to change, but George Floyd's family needed George Floyd to be here. Things should have changed before George Floyd died. But because he died, we have to keep the pressure on for this change to keep going. And it's just enough. Yeah. It's just enough. There isn't a more prayerful people than Black people all around the world, the Black diaspora. We pray for everything. We don't give up on God. And then we all get together and we question, why is it that we keep suffering? Why is it that the 85-year-old Black woman in Alabama has the same story as her 25-year-old grandson? No. Why is she telling you that she couldn't go into that store, that she couldn't use the bathroom? And your story is not quite the same, but your story is, I went into the store and they killed me. I was outside the store selling cigarettes and they killed me. I was walking in the neighborhood and they told me I couldn't walk here. Happened last week. We all saw it. Didn't die, but that man roughed up that young man. Why is her story the same? Where is the progress? What is happening? And it's not just Black people in America and all the Black people who came to America, like me, the Caribbean people, or not the Black people in South America, the Colombians, the Panamanians, right? It's not that. It's not that. It's Black people everywhere. It's Black people and brown people everywhere. It's the Maoris in New Zealand fighting for their land. The Aborigines fighting in Australia. Why is it? What is happening? When are the people, the majority rule, going to understand that this flower garden is brighter with Black and brown people in it? God created all of us. How dare you say you believe in God and for 9 minutes and 29 seconds? Listen, when we thought it was 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I did the exercise right here in my closet. I turned everything off and I sat. I have a little stair right there. I sat on that stair and I put my timer on my phone and I hit go. And after 3 minutes, it was Niagara Falls. I was just crying. It got to 6 minutes. I thought my heart was going to pop out of my chest. I could hear it. It was boom, 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 boom. I started sweating. I got so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. After, I don't know, 24 hours of labor, a woman could give birth to a child in 4 seconds flat. Push, boom. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Almost 10 minutes? Someone on your neck? And I think it was one of the expert witnesses, one of the doctors that described what the body does when it's fighting for air. And he showed how George Floyd was trying to put his nose almost like in the ground, kind of turn to get air. You think that is voluntary? No. That is the body struggling and getting ready to die. The body is very loud when it's getting ready to die. You know, the last breath, the noises that our bellies make. I'm sorry. I am not convinced that one thing didn't come out of that trial. I don't think they took George Floyd alive when they put him in that ambulance. Mm. A mother knows. A mother knows. The way his head bopped when they put him in that ambulance, they knew they were bringing a body to that hospital. George Floyd's daughter is living without her dad. She's living without her dad. I'll tell you this. My dad had a stroke when he was like 40 something years old, and he died in his 70s. So almost 28 years, my dad was not the dad we knew, the physical dad, the huggy dad, the dancing dad, you know, introduced me to the OJs and, you know, Earth, Wind and Fire. And he used to have his little pinstripe suit dancing, you know. Yeah. My dad had like fingers that were just like the way he felt the stroke coming on, and he gripped himself, his fingers stayed that way. And I missed my physical dad. But I could go visit him. his voice eventually came back. He was still that tough Caribbean dad lying in a hospital bed. Trust me. Okay. Telling us what to do and what not to do. So I didn't have my full dad, but I had my physical dad. And he refused to die. Even though he couldn't be the dad that he wanted to be. He stayed with us. He wanted to see us grow up. He stayed with us. That young girl, she won't have her dad. It's not like he's sick in the hospital. Thank God for her uncles. Thank God for his best friend who has been, you know, but Chauvin killed her dad. He killed her dad. George Floyd is just not a name. It's just not a hashtag. It's somebody's son, dad, brother, cousin, uncle, friend, lover. How dare you? How dare you? When you hurt one person, you hurt a village. I stand here as one, but I come like 1,000. I'm sure I'm paraphrasing that so badly. But when you see me, I didn't fall from a tree. George Floyd didn't fall from a tree. That man came to Minneapolis to try to make his life better. We're happy with this verdict. But I'm also scared that now they are mad. So we got to protect our people. Young Black man, careful out there in the street.
So you mentioned something. You said a mother knows. That's what you said. You said a mother knows, and we're just going to take this mother narrative along the way with this episode, because I remember a year ago on my mother's birthday, I was back home, and it's in reference to Fire in Little Africa too. So
yeah,
I remember being home and I woke up like 2:00 in the morning, and it was like, I got to get to my laptop. And it was just one of those dreams where like it was so vivid that I just had to get to my laptop so I wouldn't forget what I just saw.
Yeah.
And I guess my mom felt me up, and she came out the room, and we talked from like 2 a.m. to like 6 a.m.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
And she's always, my mom's a ball player. Like, she's a ball player. So she's always about understanding the game of life. And she was just like, so tell me more about this Fire in Little Africa. And so I'm telling her, and at this time it's like still relatively new. We hadn't recorded the album. So this is January of 2020. Hadn't recorded the album, but just telling my mom like, okay, this is the plan. These are the ideas that I have. And they were obviously really big ideas. But I said, Mom, I'm anxious. And she said, why are you anxious? And I said, Mom, these are the ideas that they killed Fred Hampton at 21, Mom. Like, these are like some ideas that like a lot of people are not gonna like. Just the philosophy, the criticality, the theoretical, like epistemological and axiological like mindset. Like, I said, Mom, my fear is that, I'm not gonna live to see the fruits of my labor. And going back to young Stevie or young viewers, like she protected me this whole time. And so I was under the assumption that she was gonna say, babe, be careful, like protect yourself, which I think was a part of the narrative. But she said one word in a question mark that I think really sparked how I had to like look at myself as a living ancestor. And she said, like the coldest line ever, question mark. She said, and I said, I don't feel like I'm gonna see the fruits of my labor or to see my son grow up. And she said, and I just, it just threw me for a loop, because I'm like, this isn't the same person that I remember protecting me. And the only thing that I can, as you were talking, the only thing I can come up with now is that I got into a point where my mom had been so obedient to what her assignment was in relationship to me that I think she had already received confirmation she had received confirmation that this conversation was going to happen eventually, and she knew what she had to say, even though she didn't want to say that. And I think that was the critical moment for me where I started to look outside of myself and be like, how do I make sure that Fire Little Africa is a project that speaks to everybody?
Yeah.
And I think everything that we've done on the ground here in Tulsa and Greenwood, and then obviously having the greatest publicist
Oh my God.
of all time, and I have to be honest. The first person, so to give context, when Larry Jenkins told me that I was going to get an interview with you prior to you coming on the team, I was just like, I actually Googled you, and I was like, I Googled your name, and it populated. Like, I'm writing in, like Larry said, look up Yvette Noel-Schure, call me back. And I hang up the phone, and I Google your name, and it populates, and I'm like, I think I spelled her name wrong, and put it back in again, and the same thing happened. And so, as I'm reading your story, Grenada, and you coming to the United States, and just the things that you've done, the people that you've worked with, and we're definitely going to talk about those things. And I'm just like overwhelmed with just like what is happening right now, and like, but like, how do I prepare for this moment? Like, I didn't feel like I was prepared, and again, God showed up, because when we get on the call, and I remember the words that you said to me. You said, I'm literally thinking that my back is against the wall and the world is on my shoulders, and I have to convince Yvette Noel-Schure to come work for Fire Little Africa. And you get on the call, and you said, as I'm about to present, you say, Dr. View, I just want to let you know that the answer is already yes. I'm going to let you present. The answer is already yes. And again, what I'm getting to is like, the difference for me, the difference for Fire Little Africa was the sacrifice of my mother, but also the sacrifices of you as a mother, and how you see, like, and this is my question, like, and in my mind, I think I know the answer, but it's like, what made you say yes to Fire Little Africa? Like, because ever since that day, I've been really wrestling with things that I probably shouldn't even be wrestling with. I shouldn't be worrying about, like, things like, this is not a practical project. This is a definition of an impossible project. So I'm just, why yes? Like, not in a negative way, but like, what made you say yes to Fire Little Africa?
The narrative, the narrative, the ancestors screaming out for the narrative to be told. Ever since I was a little girl, I was so nosy about everything that was happening. I was so curious to discover that such a tragedy happened, and that they lied to everybody about it, or just didn't say anything about it, or faked it, or made up some. And in my heart of hearts, I'm deeply a journalist. I'm deeply a journalist. I like uncovering the truth. And the narrative of Tulsa, of Greenwood, of what happened, that race massacre. I also believe that not everything has to have a Grammy-winning, Oscar-winning name, recognizable name, for the narrative to be profound. And the community story of these artists that had like hearts and were all searching for the truth resonated with me. As an immigrant woman, who grew up in a colonized island, so much is not known. so much is not known, forced to sip tea a certain way, forced to eat certain things, forced to say certain things. And then I dig into my own history and I discovered that my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was one of the original people of the Caribbean. She was an indigenous person. And I always wondered why she looked the way she looked, and to this day, I'm trying to figure out where these cheekbones of mine came from, and they're hers, and it came from someplace, And so the story, say, I didn't even hear music. I'm interested in the narrative, hearing the music was, like, having the dessert after the good meal, but the meal was already cooked.
Absolutely.
The meal was already cooked. And let me just say something about you. I think I said that to you before, that a lot of people get turned on by some stuff, all kinds of stuff. Well, this person looks a certain way and this person dresses a certain way. And like, man, bring me the smarts. Bring me the smarts. And I just loved how intelligent you approach this, that it is not just music to entertain, but, it's what we call edutain, right?
Absolutely.
It's really about an education. And let's be clear, Black people need to know what happened to that Black community, right? 100 years ago. White people need to know, brown people need to know, indigenous people need to know, okay? Because let me tell you something. When they come for you, if you didn't help other people, if you weren't there when they came for other people who didn't look like you, when they come for you, nobody will be there for you. So it means that everybody needs to learn the story. Everybody needs to protect their family, their legacy, because, this time in 1921, they went for the Black community that was flourishing. Who and whose will they train their hate on next? You need to learn this narrative so you can protect yourself. This is all about protection. Protect your narrative, protect your legacy, protect
Well,
your people.
not only are we protecting Black people, we're trying to protect all humanity.
We're trying to protect humanity. We're trying to protect humanity. I am fascinated by the stories of the Holocaust, and I'm fascinated by how much the stories are still being told, because they want every generation to say these two words: never again. Okay? So they're making sure what happened to them. And all those conspiracy theories, it didn't happen. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. The Holocaust happened. Slavery happened. Police brutality is happening. Believe people when they say crap happens to them, and learn so you could avoid it happening to you. That's why I said, yes, we got to tell some stories.
So you mentioned the narrative. That's what brought you in. And now that you're a part of the team and you've been around the artists and the executive team and listened to some of the songs, do you think Find Little Africa will be an opportunity for people to learn and or protect humanity? Or do you feel like, what do you think the implications, or how do you think Find Little Africa will be reverberated around the world?
I think many, many times when the story is being told, it's not authentically told by the people who live in that place. And I always say that if you tell your story authentically, it pushes everybody else to tell their own authentic stories. And so after speaking with some of the artists, their passion is palpable. Their need for the truth is like a thirst. And for those who have direct descendants, it's literally knowing where you came from so you could know where you're going. Knowing your past is so important. Asking them questions like, when did you first find out about this? And being shocked that some of them found out in their 20s, late 20s. I think that this is not just a Tulsa story. It's an American story. It's a global story. It's a story of young people coming together and saying, we're going to make this right for our ancestors who perished. And in doing so, we're going to rebuild and extend, create pipelines, and create space for people to earn, to thrive, and to hand it down.
Yvette, you mentioned that's heavy and beautiful at the same time. You mentioned never forget where you're coming from, and you have a story as well, coming from where you come from. And so, for those who don't know, and me just the one to hear it, just from your mouth as opposed to reading about it. I mean, just talk about values, talk about alignment. Let's talk about values and alignment in the context of like, what were you told as a kid? Well, what are those privileged memories that you remember that helped you get to where you are today? So you're talking about your story and also talking about your journalist journey, obviously things that you worked with, in regards to Columbia and everything else. Just like, can you really just talk about, what those things meant to you? How did those values set you to where you are today?
Those values are still with me every day. I had a very demonstrative grandfather, and I had a very quiet grandmother. And I knew that they loved me in a big, big, big way. But my grandfather was loud. He was big and tall and loud. And he would say, I look okay, but I married the prettiest girl. Okay. All right. Now let's move on. And he had a little shop. And in that little shop, he was purposeful about teaching me and my brothers and sisters. We were the children that he didn't plan on, right? We were his first daughter's children. And my mother began to show signs of instability, probably by the time she was in her early 20s, later on diagnosed as bipolar behavior. But my grandfather just stepped in and said, all right, I guess I got 5 new children, and raised me and my sisters and my 2 brothers. I have lots and lots more brothers and sisters from my daddy's side. But a lot of us, like double that amount. But those are the ones that were raised in that house. And every day was a lesson. Every day was a lesson. Papa taught me how to be kind. He taught me how to be generous. When I was a kid, there were lots and lots of women. Every time I turn around, somebody was just pregnant. I would just see these big bellies over our counter at our shop. And after they would come in, I would kind of notice that Papa wasn't charging them for the groceries. And he would say, you're too young to realize how young that girl is with that belly. She's not going to be able to feed herself or that child that's coming. So what if we gave her some free milk today? And I learned that. I'm generous to a fault because of him. I hear it every day. He and my aunt would sit down and teach me how to count using Coca-Cola bottles because we had a store. So we sold everything from kerosene for your lamp to flour and sugar and soap and everything. It was just one of those bodegas. Really, I thought it was a huge supermarket, but it was really probably a bodega, right?
Yeah.
He also taught me about hard work because he was his own businessman, his own, he owned his company. He had his store, but he also had acres and acres of land. And in those days, would ship a lot of produce to England, bananas, cocoa, nutmeg for, the spice that is so good, like in cakes and things. And the oils are used for medicinal purposes and everything like that. And I just watched him. I watched him do all of that. And then one day, my grandfather, this was the lesson that will stay with me forever. My grandfather called me. I was really, really tiny. And he handed me a brown paper bag and put me up on the bus. There were wooden buses, lifted me up, put me on the bus. And the bus driver dropped me where I'm supposed to go. And I'm supposed to hand the bag to the merchant, the merchant that's by the shore. He got all of the groceries from Trinidad, the bigger island, that we would now get at wholesale to bring up into our little store up in our little village.
Wow.
And when he opened the bag and he poured down all that money, thousands of dollars for the bale of sugar and the bale of rice and the bale of flour and oil and codfish and everything else and soap and rice. And in that moment, I realized that my grandfather had empowered me, that I was part of a conduit that was going to feed my village. And that he trusted me. He trusted me. And I worshiped him until that last piece of earth fell on the top of his coffin, because he saw the promise in me that escaped his daughter because of mental illness. So every day since that day, and every day now, I do everything with integrity, with kindness, hard work, everything in praise of what I've been taught by the smartest man I knew, who never had a formal education, the hardest working man I know, the gentlest man I knew, even though he was big and bold. He loved us. He loved us 200% more than he should have, because he needed to make up for the days when they were dark and cloudy for the daughter he loved so much. And to this day, it's Papa. Papa, what would Papa do?
Right.
Now, I'm not going to take away anything from Mama, because she was a saint. She was just everything. I just wanted to be like my grandma so badly. But they also taught me that you have to forgive and you have to meet people where they are. So when I grew up, I didn't question why my mother was not available to me. I just became available to her. I just looked her in her eyes. I was 14 years old. I came to this country and I said, Mommy, until God takes your last breath, you can count on me. I will do everything for you. I will feed you. I will clothe you. I will wipe your tears. I will wipe the spit off your lips. I will lift your leg up when they're heavy. I will love you, Mommy, until the very end. And I did. And that doesn't come because we fell from trees. That comes from watching people do that for other people. And it comes from parents and grandparents being purposeful and telling you you're worthy. You're worthy. And if you think you're worthy, you're going to think everybody else is worthy. And this is what I say to people. Why do you love so much, Yvette? You're always smiling. Why are you so happy all the time? You know what? I love because I was loved. I love because I was loved. My love is big enough to protect the people I love. My love is big enough to do my job and elevate young people's narrative. My love is big enough to get to the truth of who we are, whose we are, where we came from, and where the hell we going. because we going. We going. Let me show you
Absolutely.
something. Let me show you something. I know this is a podcast, so you're the only one that's going to see it, but I don't know, these are the people. That indigenous woman of Black, Indian, Carib, Arawak heritage, and my African, Caribbean grandpa that never ever smiled.
That's beautiful.
And they are with me at all times. At all times.
So is it safe to say, because I'm always asking, because I'm feeling it right now with Fire with Africa, but I mean, obviously with the work that you do, like, it seems like you don't sleep. So
I sleep
like,
better now. The only good thing that came out of this horrible pandemic is that after about 6 months of going to bed 6 o'clock in the morning, one day I was just like, girl, stop. Like literally, I was just like, stop. I sleep now. I still don't sleep 8 hours. I don't think everybody needs 8 hours, but I definitely know that it's time to go to bed because I know I can't be my best, and what I do takes, energy. So I get some sleep now. I get about 5 hours. I mean, it's all I need. I'm good.
About 5. Okay.
About 5. Some people need 8. Some people need 12. I don't. If I ever get an 8-hour night sleep, I am groggy the next day. I'm just groggy. I can't. 5 hours is my sweet spot, and then I'm good to go. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna see what my sweet spot is to be now. So fast forward, come to the States, and Black Beat. You start at the Black Beat, if I'm not mistaken.
It's my first real job. I actually had an internship first at Gannett Westchester newspapers. Okay. And I had done little writing for like community paper, church paper, stuff like that. And then I got an internship at Gannett Westchester newspapers. They were just, as a corporation, they were just developing the colorful newspaper, which became USA Today. It was like basically the first national newspaper, and it had color borders, purple for life, and sports and things like that. And then I went to Black Beat. Then I got an opportunity to go to Black Beat, and I spent about almost 10 years there, probably 9.5 years there. And while at Black Beat, I met Larry Jenkins, and he was a great publicist. I admired him. We became friends. And in my capacity of being an editor, I called Larry because he was my friend. I was just really upset that Mariah Carey's album was out and I didn't have it. And I think Larry said, "Oh, we haven't sent it yet." I said, "Look, I work for Sterling McFadden Publishing. They have other magazines that are written for a pop crowd. They have it. I need it." He called me back. He was like, "Yvette, you're so passionate. You ever thought about being a publicist?" I was like, "Larry, I'm on deadline. Okay. I just need the album." He said, "Yvette, we've been looking for a publicist. I think you would make a really good publicist." Aha moment. Why didn't I think about that, Yvette? Why didn't I think that a journalist could be a publicist? Come up and talk to me. I said, "Larry, I just need the album. Please, please." Eventually I went up, and Larry basically did not even interview me. Larry was like, "Girl, you want the job?"
Sounds like it is.
No, seriously. In fact, Dr. View, I was working at Columbia Records. I started about October 3rd, 1993. So this is probably March or April. And I get a call. From HR. I've been getting paid every 2 weeks. I get a call from HR. Could we get a resume on file?
That's funny.
I don't even think he remembered to give them my resume.
Yeah, he was just
he just told them, "You got to hire. I'm going to hire this girl. I'm going to hire this girl because Yvette's gonna show you. Yvette's gonna show you. She's gonna bring a whole other way to do this, and I need this on my team. And he was tough on me. Let's not get this twisted. Larry Jenkins was tough on me, but I'm so grateful for that. You know, he took a red pen to my reports. He made me want to do my work better and tell you that I did my work in a better way, to show you what I've done. He made writing a press report, you know, art, you know.
He sounds like
boosting your confidence.
He sounds like a very Gordius quality control type of person in relation to publicity.
Absolutely. I think Larry Jenkins in another life could have been an incredible football coach, because he really was our coach. Like, he really wanted, at the time, I think he was managing probably 8 to 10 publicists in his department, and he was really amazing. And when he was tough on you, you knew it.
So with the artists that you've worked with, and I'm not going to give it away for the audience, but I and it's not, and I want to make sure I do the disclaimer, it's not to flex, it's more so to show the story. Like, you came from Grenada. Like,
little Grenada. We have 100 and I want to say maybe 12,000 people on 3 islands. Okay, we're a 3 island nation, and there are only 112,000 people.
And because of your grandfather and grandmother's obedience in the midst of what your mom was going through, and the values that they gave you, and how you internalized those values, and then gave it back, not only to them, but to your mother. And then you come to the United States, Black Beat, good friends with Larry Jenkins. Larry is hard on you, and see something in you that you didn't see in yourself at the time.
Nope, I didn't.
And then you go on this amazing journey with these amazing artists. One, can you name those artists, but also name what you learned from them, but also like how your values stayed the same throughout that journey. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
Well, when I first started, like I mentioned earlier, the first person I ended up working with was Mariah Carey, which is really the weirdest thing, that I would just ask for her album, and then a week later I was her publicist. I was like, what is going on? Only in America, what is happening? Only in America, but forget only in America, only Larry Jenkins' mind.
Absolutely.
Only Larry Jenkins' mind. I would say, all right, girl, you asked for it, here you go, you know? I worked with Mariah, and then I kind of got sort of named as the give it to Yvette kind of. So I ended up having like a sort of mashup of artists. I wasn't like a specialist in one genre. So I did jazz. I had I worked with some of the Masalis folks, and then I had Grover Washington Jr. I worked at some point with the great Nancy Wilson, and then of course I was Caribbean, so all of the reggae people came to me, World of Girls, Super Cats, you know, and it was all that. And then, you know, around me on our great team, my amazing buddy, Miguel Beguer, had the Fugees. And with the Fugees came, hello, my Haitian brethren, you know, Praz and Wyclef. So I was like, oh my God. And then I didn't get to work them. I worked both Lauren and Clef after solo, but that was Miguel's act, but we were all there on that team in the middle of just the most beautiful, explosive time in music, but especially for Black music. And then of course the Brat came, you know, and the Brat blew my mind. You know, she was so talented and she was so different, and I just really, really loved her. And then I had Kenny Lattimore, Kenny Lattimore and Maxwell came around the same time. So Miguel had Maxwell and I had Kenny Lattimore, right? And then after that, I was just kind of sitting in my room, trying to work, trying to get my acts on. And I got a call to come downstairs to the conference room because they had just signed 4 girls from Houston, Texas. And they really wanted me to meet those girls because they thought, with my experience with teenagers from Black Beat magazine, you know, I would at least be kind to them, right?
How old were they?
They were, when I met them, they were, I think, between 15 and 16. And I figured in my head, no one said it to me, but I figured in my head, they don't know what to do because there's all this competition out there. You know, there's En Vogue, you know, there's SWB. They're like, oh, we really love these girls, but oh, I don't think we know what to do with it. But at least the worst thing that could happen to them is Yvette Noel-Schure gets to love them. Okay. So instantly loved them. Got back to Larry's office and said to Larry, can I go to Houston for a weekend? Because I was trying to think about my Black Beat days when covering acts meant breaking them up for the magazine as well. Like doing the photo of the group, but also talking about them individually because different fans like different people, like with New Edition and all of that, you know, New Kids on the Block and all of that. People would cut out even just their heads because I'm a Bobby fan, you know, I'm a Ralph fan. And I was like, oh, I got to get to know these ladies so that I can pitch them as a group, but also, you know, be able to say different things about each one. So if a journalist is not like, whatever, it's like, oh, she likes this. Oh, she's like this. And whatever it takes to get someone interested, that weekend changed my life. That weekend changed my life. I met 4 absolutely beautiful, brilliant, smart young women who at that time were already rehearsing hours and hours a day, you know, performing in the parking lot at a Walmart in Houston, Texas, as though they were at Madison Square Garden. They were so driven. They were so driven. Did I know that spring trip to Houston in 1997 would change my life forever? No. But did I see greatness? I did. And did I roll my sleeve up and say, I want to be part of everything they do? I did. And then when they became 3, that was a huge change that came about with Charlie's Angel. And people don't remember just the juxtaposition of that. Charlie's Angels 3, and then it was 3, and then the song was Independent Women. And it was like the first time people really paid attention to their purposeful feminist voices that were coming out of, they were no longer kids, you know, they were literally saying, we're grown. I loved every part of it. And then I branched out and I started working their individual projects because they did some solo things before the official 2005 hiatus. So after Destiny's Child, I became Beyonce's publicist. I became Michelle's publicist. I became Kelly's publicist. I'm still Beyonce's publicist for all those years. Guess what, though? The universe will conspire to get you what you want because I'm also Michelle's publicist and I'm also Kelly's publicist right now in 2021. So honestly, those ladies have been in my life for a lifetime. And the one story that I like to tell people is that years ago, when we would do a photo shoot or they would have a performance or something, you know, maybe people want to go out to dinner afterwards or something. And I would always mouth to them, I'm going home to my babies. And we still laugh about that because now that, Kelly and Kelly and Beyonce and Latavia and Latoya are mothers, they remember. They said, oh my God, we know what that is. We know what that is, So it's just a big circle. And I have not changed who I am. I operate with love and protection. For me, it's publicity is second to what I do. Protection is first. Protecting the narrative, protecting their privacy, protecting who they are as private citizens, and making sure that the world separates the public from the private to give them space to grow as individuals. And of course, I left up, my friend, my energy, John Legend. I worked with John as well. And John and I are really great friends today. I love John. John is very special to me. I can't, one of these days, no, not one of these days I'll tell him. I always tell him. He's very special to me. And how it came about with John was also very special. Just, he wanted to work with me. He said, whoever's doing Beyonce's publicity, I want to meet them. And I was like, dude, I'm busy. Okay. And then he went ahead and he gave me a private performance, play the piano. And I was like, okay. Yeah, it's really, really special.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm gonna give one last question, but I'm gonna try to embed these questions to one. Yvette, you are a living ancestor.
Oh my God.
And so the question is, what does everything is us mean to you? But I want to kind of set it up. So, Grenada has Black history. Greenwood and the artists and the creatives here have history. When you think of everything is us in the context of what we're doing with Fireside Africa, how do you think our history will speak back to your history? And if we want to go deeper, how does it speak back? How will it speak back to your grandfather and grandmother in the context of like, what I'm really asking is, what do you think they would think of Fine Little Africa? And if they didn't get it at the first, like if you had to have a conversation with them right now, okay, put it like this. When you made a call to a certain person about getting a Zoom call, you said, everyone get on Zoom, I'm gonna call them right now. And you gassed them up to the point where I was like, okay, I don't even think it's that good at this point. I'm like, I know what we got is good, but okay, you bet. So what I'm getting to is like, if your mother was here today, what would you tell her about Fire in Africa? And it's really the context of like history talking to history.
Yeah.
Your daughter talking to a mother, Fila talking to Grenada, and to the world. Like, what is, in the context of that, what does everything is us mean to you? And what would you say to your mother about this project?
Well, everything is us. It's all of us. It's not just the folks in Tulsa. It's not just the folks in Grenada. Everything is us. Is the story of Black people. It's the story of community. The story of who we are. It's the story of having a piece of bread and breaking it in three so that we could all eat. And it's the story of truth. And I believe that where I come from, that we've always seeking the truth. Grenadians are revolutionaries. Like, we don't play. We don't play in Grenada. We wanted our independence. We got our independence. Grenadians stand up and fight. to make things right. So I think even before my grandparents had to say anything, it's already in it's in the bone, it's in the blood, So I think I would say, Papa, Mama, Mommy, here I am. The girl that you said it's okay to love words, the girl that you put in that church and say, read loudly. The acoustics in there will carry your voice from the first pew to the back. We believe you, Yvette. We believe you. Say it out loud. I would say, I've been given the opportunity to tell the story of some people who were living in America when you were already grown. I would say to my mother, you may not have known what the history is because you were only 10. You were born in 1931. This is what happened. And here I am, born in 61, 30 years to a month after you were born, Mommy. And I get a chance as the immigrant Black girl to be curious, to seek the truth in your name and in their name in Tulsa, to tell people how it's so important to tell your story. And I would say to my mom specifically, thank you. Thank you for the days when you were unwell. And I got to see the glimpse of your beauty and your brilliance. And for me to realize that my need to always speak the truth came from you. My need to seek the truth came from you. My love of words came from you. You taught me, Mommy, how to enter a room and dig my toes and pretend they're sand from the Grenada. You taught me to dig my toes in, stand firm, tell my story. And I thank you. I even thank you for the days, Mommy, when you were so sick that I had to cradle you, because it was our bond. Gave me the strength to fight and live another day to tell your story. All these years later, Mommy, I am talking about you. You don't die. You don't die until no one says your name. And Mommy, Mama, and Papa, every opportunity I get until my last breath, I will say your name. You are the most 3 important people ever in my life. And your stories, I'm going to tell it one day. I'm going to tell it one day. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to write it down. You know why? Because we got to make sure people keep saying your name, those folks in Tulsa. They got to keep saying your name. You know why say your name, say their name is so important in the Black community? Because if they don't say your name, you truly die. You truly die. Names are magical. They're magical, but someone has to scream them out, because it's not just the name. It's all the roots that comes from the name. It's the storytelling. It's the narrative. It's the life. It is, when someone die and they talk about the dash is the smallest part in there, right? It's the years, how you lived. The dash is that little thing, 1921, 2021. The dash, that little thing is the life. It's the life. It's the narrative. So that's what I would say to my people. And in the end, I would say to them, thank you for this little flat nose. Thank you for these high cheekbones. Thank you for my smile. Thank you for my confidence. Thank you for every valley, every hole I have fallen into. And thank you for the strength you gave me to crawl out of it.
I was not expecting this today. Or